Hello everyone, DM Gashbad here, and today we are back to our Rangers of Shadowdeep solo campaign. We are still on Mission 1, The Missing. My ranger and his companions have been called to investigate an attack on a local village. They're not thrilled about this as they were living the good life in Alladore, but unfortunately the king's first choice, a ranger by the name of Aventine, well, he didn't come back from the mission. In Scenario 1, The Deserted Village, we found the body of Aventine and we found these zombies. We also found some mysterious tracks leading away from the village, so even though we don't really want to, we're gonna go investigate this. It's helped somewhat by the fact that we got a bunch of treasure in the village, and my funds are getting a little low. In the Ranger book, it says when you get gold and jewels, the Ranger doesn't have much use for that. I wholeheartedly disagree. I feel that my Ranger, Tyrus Halperdirk, can find a lot of uses for that treasure. So we're going to follow these tracks, we're going to see if we can rescue any villagers, find out the source of this menace, and maybe get a little extra gold and jewels along the way. So now we're on to Scenario 2, The Infected Trees, where we discover that there are these horrible, monstrous spiders that grab villagers, cocoon them, and turn them into the zombies that we faced in the village. Just to reintroduce you to the party real fast, on the left we have my Swordsman Robert Renault. He has Navigation +3 and he found a potion of healing in the last game. Immediately to the right of him we have Patchy Jorvus, my rogue. I made a mistake in my warband creation, and I gave him, for his extra 3 skill points, I added them to his lockpick skill. I am not allowed to do that. I read that rule wrong. It says you are not allowed to add those to an existing skill. I read that as you are allowed to do that. So I am correcting it for this adventure, and I'm giving him +3 acrobatics. In the center, we have Tyrus Halperdirk, my ranger. He is now level 1, but I'm not going to go into all his skills and everything. If you want to find more about him, you can watch my video where I set up the warband itself. Further right, we have my Tracker Phillipe de Gaston. Again, I added my skill points to the tracking skill. I'm not allowed to do that, so instead I gave him Swim +3. And finally, all the way on the right, we have Kael Rexmaar, my Man-at-arms. He has got Armory +3. Notably absent from this group photo is my Templar Grendal Gracht, who died in the first scenario. I'm not real happy about that, but we'll see how this party does without him. A little housekeeping before we move on. After this game was played, I realized I had been making a rules mistake. I don't think it's going to make a difference for this game. In the monster phase, creatures are supposed to activate in the order of their health from highest to lowest. I've been doing the opposite. I've been activating them from lowest to highest. Sorry about that, I'll correct that going forward. I also want to take a moment to talk about the terrain for this episode. I have been playing wargames for a really long time, and it is surprising to me how much terrain I've had to make recently. Something about these solo games, they really eat up a lot of terrain. You'd think I'd have everything I need by this point, but it is not the case. In particular for this game, I need to make 5 cocoon markers and I need to make 5 nest trees. The campaign says you only need 4, but a random event will place another nest tree down, so you really need 5. Here we have a picture of the cocoon markers that I made for this game, and as you can see, they are all very different. My initial idea was that I was going to use the tied up dwarf from the Battle of Skull Pass Warhammer Fantasy Battles starter set. It's this dwarf slayer that's all tied up. They don't give you any rules or scenario instructions to actually use this model. But the game is about goblin spider riders fighting dwarfs, so I figured it'd be completely appropriate to have him all webbed up, to paint those ropes as webbing, and I thought that would do fine. The thing is, I thought I had a bunch of these. I couldn't imagine me using a lot of those models, but for whatever reason, I could only find one. So I painted him up, and I'm going to use him for one of the cocoon markers. So now I have to figure out what I can do to make 4 more cocoon markers, and I made them in a bunch of different ways. At the bottom center, we have my first concept. I thought I'd just take a glob of green stuff and then take a hot glue gun. And you know those little wisps, those little strings of hot glue that you always get? Well, I thought I'd just pull those and I'd just wrap it around that green stuff and make a cocoon like that. It actually looks okay. I'm not unhappy about how it looks at all. The thing was, this was actually really a pain. When you pull those wisps out, they cool really rapidly, and when they cool, they're not very sticky. So I ended up with just these strands of hot glue that weren't sticking to the green stuff, and it was just a time-consuming process in general. So I didn't really like doing that. I didn't think that was a good use of my time, so I tried something else. The next thing I tried was I had this little plastic egg from another scenario, and I just wrapped it around and around with fishing wire. I thought fishing wire was small enough and plasticky enough, and it would look appropriate. This is the one at the back in the center. It didn't actually look that great. I wound the fishing line around and around, and it looked like a big ball of wire. I actually didn't hate the way it looked. It just didn't look like a spiderweb cocoon. I might use it for something else, like some sci-fi piece of terrain or something like that, because the effect was kind of cool. It just wasn't what I was looking for. So I did a little research, and I found a couple YouTube videos about using dryer sheets to make spiderwebbing. So I bought a couple of those, and so I tried to pull apart the dryer sheets and then glue them onto this thing. It worked. I don't think it looks bad at all. I kind of like the look of it. The thing is, I expected it to kind of pull apart like Halloween spiderwebbing or cotton swabs or something like that, and it didn't. It was actually really thick and tough to pull apart, and it tended to break as much as anything. I don't know if you're supposed to run it through the dryer a whole bunch of times, or if I just bought the incorrect brand, but while I did end up with the effect I was looking for, it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. Finally, the two markers on the left and the right, those are skeleton dwarfs from the Mines of Moria. I bought a sprue of the Mines of Moria. You can either get those in like the Lord of the Rings Mines of Moria boxed game or the old strategy battle game. Anyway, I just bought a sprue of the terrain pieces from those kits like a long time ago, just because they were cool and the sprue was cheap. The skeleton models they're okay, I guess. They're not great. But the thing that kind of bugged me about these is that I thought in the movie that those guys were all covered with spider webs. So here's an opportunity to fix two things at once. I'm going to get myself a spiderweb cocoon, and I'm also going to paint up these skeleton dwarfs from the Mines of Moria in a more movie-accurate way. So I painted those up and then covered them with the dryer sheets as before. I think it worked fine. The only thing about that is that I actually did a pretty good job painting up those skeletons, and after the dryer sheets went on, you can't see them at all. I could have just barely painted them, and it would have looked about the same. Still, I have a bunch of these objective tokens, terrain pieces, whatever I want to use them for in the future, and the job's done and I'm ready to go. Let's look at the infected trees themselves. Here's my first two. Now, I obviously could have just taken any modeled trees that I had and just pulled some cotton or Halloween spiderwebbing over them, and that would have been it. The thing is, I didn't want to. Spiderwebs in Warhammer and games like that, they tend not to actually be cotton or strings or whatever. They tend to model plastic spiderwebs onto the bases or the models that you're using. And I wanted my things to match that aesthetic. So, case in point, the Arachnarok spider. It's got these bases with these tree stumps and these plastic spiderwebs strewn across it, and these little spiders and webbed up goblins and everything. Anyway, they're great, and I thought they would be perfect for this. So I went into my Arachnarok spider kit, and I pulled out these terrain pieces, and I added them to the bases of my trees, which I made in exactly the same way as I make all my trees. They're a wireframe wrapped with masking tape, and then I splotch on a little spackle on the top just to give it a little extra texture. I probably could have skipped this test, and honestly, my old trees, that's just got textured paint on them. It doesn't have the spackle on it at all. The leaves are just Woodland Scenics clump foliage white glued on. This isn't the most sophisticated or realistic way of making trees, but it does match all my other trees. And part of the reason why I wanted to do this way is because in Warhammer Fantasy, you can get a particular kind of forest called venom thickets. And I always thought that I should have like some spiders or something poisonous running around those to denote those kind of forests when they show up on the game table. And this gives me an opportunity to make that. I'm going to make these creepy web and spider filled trees so that when I play Warhammer Fantasy and I get a venom thicket, now I can use these. Here are my next three trees. I used more pieces from the Arachnarok spider kit that I wasn't necessarily going to use. You can't really see the center one. It's got a webbed up skeleton in there that I actually really like. Just the angle is hard to get a picture of. The one on the right, I was running out of the web stuff from that kit. And so the little spider web on the base, that comes from the base of just one of the newer plastic spider riders. And then I took a plastic spider and just attached him to the bottom of a tree branch with a bit of wire, like just clipped off from a paper clip and then painted white. And so, yeah, those are my nest trees for this game. So here we have the board all set up and ready to play. It's a 2.5 foot by 2.5 foot space. The back 6 inches are where the nest trees go. I can put them anywhere, but they have to be within 6 inches from the top table edge and 6 inches away from another nest tree, which actually means that they're pretty much got to end up the way that they are because, again, my trees are kind of large and they take up a lot of space. And so there's really not a lot of choice. One web cocoon marker goes in the exact center of the table, and the other 4 get scattered 8 inches in a random direction away from that. And they have to be at least 4 inches away from another web cocoon, so you re-roll it if it ends up too close. So I ended up with a pretty even spread. I've got one right in front of my guys, one a little closer on the left. There's one directly away from my guys on the other side of the center, and then one kind of far away from me on the right. 5 giant spiders start the game on the board. 3 of them are next to a nest tree at the back table edge, so you have to roll randomly. The one second from the left doesn't have a spider. You also get 2 giant spiders next to 2 random web cocoons. I got one in the center of the table and one in the back center. My guys all get placed within 3 inches of the back table edge, and the general plan that I have is that I'm going to keep all my guys together for mutual support. And the way the cocoon's scattered, I think I can just arc to the left and loop around all as a group, burning trees and searching web cocoons as I go. Speaking of burning trees and searching cocoons, you come into contact with one of those things, you can spend an action to either burn it or search it. You burn the trees, then the tree is gone, which is good. You search a cocoon, then you roll on a chart. You can find a dead body, which doesn't do anything, or you could find a survivor, which is good, or a zombie, which is bad. Before the game actually begins, there's a couple of rolls that we need to make. The first is a tracking roll with a target number of 12. I'm going to choose Phillipe to do that, even though he's no longer +8, he's just +5. I still roll an 8, so that succeeds. That means I've been really good at tracking these spiders down. I get there before more of them can emerge, and so I get to remove one of the spiders. These spiders are fairly dangerous. They're not as tough as zombies. They're still fight +0. They are tougher than giant rats. They're armor 8 with 4 health. The big thing about them is that they have poison. And if you take damage from a poisonous attack, then you're down to 1 action for the rest of the game. I mean, unless you heal yourself up to full, but really, that's a pretty severe handicap. And so I want to fight these guys at range. I want to shoot them. So making that track roll, I'm going to remove a spider. I'm going to remove the closest one on that center web cocoon. We also get to make a survival roll, again with a target number of 12. Grendal Gracht was my guy with survival. He had a +3, but he's not around anymore. He's kind of dead. So we're down to Tyrus Halperdirk. He's got a +2. He rolls a 20, though, so he's picking up the slack. That means that on our way, we have found a batch of Farlight Leaf. I guess if we take this herb then as an action, then we will be +1 shoot and -1 fight. I give this to Phillipe de Gaston. I'm tempted to use it, but I think maybe in these scenarios later on it might be more useful. Specifically, I'm thinking of that bridge guard scenario. Anyway, time to start the game itself, and we're going to start with the Ranger phase. So, Ranger and up to 2 guys can activate. I'm going to start with Phillipe de Gaston, my tracker. His bow has a range of 24 inches, and I've got some lines of sight here. I'm going to start with that spider all the way in the far left corner, the northwest. First roll of the game, I roll a 14 plus my shoot of 2 versus the spider's roll of 5. Well, that did great. I win that dice contest. I beat his armor by a total of 8. The spider only has 4 health, so immediately that spider is dead. For the second action, Phillipe is going to move up. He's got a move of 7. I'm going to move him past that first web cocoon. I do feel like I have to keep moving this campaign. I can't just sit back and shoot because I need to get at those web trees and start burning them up. We've only got 10 rounds to do everything. Also, I want him near that cocoon. I don't intend him to search the cocoon, but I want him nearby it, and the reason being is I'm going to not search it in the Ranger phase. I'm just going to shoot and move my guys up, and then the monster phase will go, the spiders will move forward, and then in my companion phase, I'm going to move up one of my companions, and they're going to search the cocoon. So, the plan here is that beginning of the companion phase, one of my companions is going to search the cocoon. If we find a zombie, then I'm going to place it in contact with some of these guys that have moved up, like Phillipe. So they're already surrounded. Then I can move my other companions up to fight it, and if they don't manage to kill it, I'll still have a ranger phase to go in the next round before this zombie gets to attack. So does that make sense to everybody? I do not want to take chances with their zombies. They were a giant pain in the last scenario. Next up will be my Ranger Tyrus Halperdirk himself. I'm going to move him up so that he can take a shot at the most threatening spider, the one by that central web cocoon at the back. Now I moved and there's a piece of intervening terrain, so the spider is going to get +2 to its die roll. Thankfully it rolls a 2, so even with that +2, that's still only a 4. Halperdirk goes and rolls an 8 plus his shoot of 2 will give him a 10, so it does 2 damage, so the spider's down to half health. That's not bad. With no other bows to fire, I'm going to go on to the creature phase, leave the rest of my companions for the companion phase. And so the monsters all just move straight towards me. I got 3 spiders coming at me, including the one that was wounded. So the spiders are getting kind of close. They're reasonably fast. They've got a move of 6, so they trucked forward 9 inches in that last round. But I can't really do anything about it right now. That is what you'd call a problem for next turn. So instead, in the companion phase, I'm going to activate my Man-at-arms Kael Rexmaar. He is going to move up as per the plan, and he is going to search that first web cocoon. And sure enough, I'm glad I put the thought into this, because we do in fact find a zombie. So, an evil zombie erupts from the webs, and I stick him right in combat with both Kael and Phillipe. Obviously, I would have rather found a survivor in there, but that is okay, as the doctor says the moment has been prepared for. I'm now going to activate my Swordsman Robert Renault. He is going to jump forward and help out my guys, and he's going to attack that zombie with a nice 2 guys in combat to help him, so that's going to add 4 to his dice roll, plus 4 for his attack. Now, this has gone wrong for me before, and it's a little bit shaky because Robert only rolls a 10. That still gives him an 18, and the zombie, monster's not rolling well today at all, rolls a 3. That is an extremely dead zombie. Robert just managing to get past his armor of 12 with 6 points of damage. Zombie's only got 6 health. Couldn't ask for anything more. Good job, Robert. So I've got one more companion I can activate, and that's Patchy Jorvus, my rogue. He was going to be my backup plan in case Robert wasn't able to kill the zombie. He was going to run in there and attack it as well. Well, now he's got a lot more options, and so I decide I'm going to move him up into that cluster of my companions, and yeah, I'm going to chuck my throwing knife at that lead spider, the one that was hurt by Tyrus's arrow. I only get 1 shot with this throwing knife a game, but last round I was able to kill a giant rat, and I continue to be a champion at throwing knives. He gets a 17 plus his shoot of 1 for a total of 18 versus the spider's 11, because we add 2 to its defense because this is a hurried shot. Patchy had to move before he fired. Still, I beat the roll. I beat it by more than enough to take away all its health. There is another dead spider. This game is feeling a lot different than my last one. Even with that throwing knife being -1 damage, I'm still going to kill that spider. But before I get too confident, like last game, we have event cards. At the end of every round in the event phase, we're going to draw one of these. This time, there are only 7 of them, so in a 10-round game, we're going to go through all of them. And the first one I draw is the red 4. A red 4 means that a random member of my warband stumbles into a spider web, and wouldn't you know it, my ranger himself, Tyrus, goes and trips into one of those things. So, when you're webbed, at the beginning of your round, and we've just done the event phase, so we're on to the next round, I have to make a strength test with, again, difficulty 12. Another reason it would have been good to have the Templar around, because he's got a good strength. Unfortunately, Tyrus doesn't have any points in the skill strength, so he's just got to make a straight dice roll and see if he can get that 12. He rolls a 10, and so that means I can't activate at all this round, and the next round I have to roll again to see if I can do anything. And I'm just going to continue to be stuck in this web until I can roll a 12. I don't really like that. I got these spiders bearing down on me. I've got trees to burn. I've got things to do. So I'm going to take a gamble, and I am going to use my Hand of Fate skill to allow me to roll 1 die roll. I can only do this once per game, but I think the sooner I use this, the better, because if I don't get out of this web, there might not be any opportunity to use this at all. Well, the gamble paid off, and I get a 16, and so Tyrus bursts from the web, ready to take action this next round. So I had to burn the Hand of Fate, but I think it's well worth it. So it's the Ranger phase, and Phillipe, seeing that Tyrus is momentarily occupied, he's going to activate first. And he is going to keep doing what he has been doing because it's been working so far. He's going to shoot the next closest spider. And again, the dice rolls are coming through for me. Phillipe goes and rolls a 17 plus a shoot of 2, gets himself a 19. The spider gets 10, even if he has intervening terrain or anything like that. That's still going to kill that spider. And so we are just going to rinse and repeat. For his second action, Phillipe is going to move up to that next web cocoon, and we're just going to keep doing exactly what we've been doing. Tyrus is going to activate next. There's only one spider left on the board. I'm going to shoot at him. The dice rolls don't come through on this one. It was bound to happen. I roll a 4 plus my shoot of 2 gives me a 6. The spider rolls a 13. That makes it a miss. That's okay. I think my companions have got this web cocoon covered. I am going to try and move as far forward as I can so that I can get closer to those trees. In the creature phase, the spider gets to go. It's going to make a double move towards the closest one of my models, which in this case is Tyrus. So 9 inches forward puts him right there. We're on to the companion phase, and we are not phased. I'm going to start with Patchy Jorvus this time. He is on web cocoon duty since Kael Rexmaar. He didn't do such a great job last time. He just found a zombie. Anyway, I move up. I search the web cocoon. I find another zombie. I may have arrived a little bit too late to save this village. Also, my plan isn't quite working out as well as I would have liked. I can't put the zombie in contact with both Patchy and Phillipe and still have it close enough for my other companions to get at it. So he's just in contact with Patchy, and we move on to my next activation, which is going to be Robert Renault. So Robert's going to charge in with his first action and then attack with his second. He's going to have a +6, +4 for his fight, +2 for having a friend. He's going to roll a 10, which is a 16, so that's not too bad. The zombie, he rolls a 14, so if I didn't have that friend in the fight, it would have been a tie. But as it is, I win. I'm going to cause 4 points of damage. Not as good as last round, but I will absolutely take it. That leaves Kael Rexmaar, my man-at-arms, to bat cleanup. He's going to go in. He only rolls a 7, but now he's got 2 friends in the fight. So that's going to be plus another 7, 3 for his fight, 4 for the 2 friends. The zombie only rolls a 4, so I get a grand total of 14. That's 2 above his armor. That's exactly as much health as the zombie had. So I just stab that guy to death while he's busy fighting my other friends. We're on to the event phase, and we get a red 3, which is exactly the same as a red 4. It's another web. So I roll randomly, and I find out that the person who cleverly stumbled into the web was Robert Renault. Got a little bit too crazy trying to charge in and kill another zombie. Wasn't looking where he was going, and goes into a web and gets himself all tangled up. We're on to the next round. That means Robert's got to make that strength check. He rolls a 3, and so he gets no activation this round until he can finally go and roll that 12. On to the Ranger phase. There's only one bad guy left on the table, and so we are going to start with my Ranger Tyrus Halperdirk, and we're going to try and make that one less bad guy. That spider is right there in front of him, so might as well shoot him while I can. Tyrus rolls a 20. Doesn't matter what the spider rolls. Doesn't matter at all, because monsters don't get crits. He kills the heck out of that spider. That means the table is cleared of villains. So he plugs the spider at the last second and then just nonchalantly moves up his full 7 inches towards the stuff. We're going to start clearing out these trees and cocoons before more bad things arrive. With all the bad guys dead, I might as well take the creature phase now because no one's going to do anything. We're going to start with Kael Rexmaar, my man-at-arms. We are going to have him move towards that central web cocoon. He is going to search that for his second action. We find a dead body. So not a zombie this time, which is fine, but also not a survivor, which is starting to concern me because that's where most of the experience comes from in this scenario. It's not exactly shocking I haven't found one yet. It is the least likely thing on the chart that I'm going to get, but it would be nice to find one. Next up, we're going to go with Big Phil, my tracker. He is going to take a double move towards that tree in the far left-hand corner. And finally, Patchy Jorvus is going to move east, over to the right. With no monsters jumping out at me, I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable having my guys spread out, and I want one of my faster guys, like Patchy, to go get to that far corner and start lighting trees on fire. For the event phase, we get red 6, which is Ray of Light. Now, normally that would mean I can move one of the spiders either away from the light or towards it or something. I get to move them around where I want to, but there are no spiders left on the board. So this is a good event to get. No new monsters. It does mean that I still haven't found that new web tree, and I would like to get that sooner rather than later so I will have the time to go hunt it down and burn it. But in the meantime, everything's going the way of my guys. On to round 4 and the Ranger phase. I'm going to activate Tyrus. He's just going to move to that second web tree and light that thing on fire and destroy it. Quick note about this burned out tree stump. I didn't actually intend to use this. You don't have to replace these web trees with anything. You can just remove them from the table. That's what you're supposed to do. But at the last second, I realized I did have these old terrain pieces, not painted by me, but I thought, hey, perfect time to use them. So I'm just going to replace the tree that I burnt with this thing. We go on to the creature phase. No creatures to have a phase. Companion phase, we're going to start with Phillipe. He's going to move to that far left-hand web tree and set that thing on fire as well. Not only does burning these web trees get me experience, but it also limits where new spiders can arrive from, so I'm keen to do this. At the beginning of this round, Robert Renault rolled a 7 for his strength test, so he is still webbed, so I'm still a guy down. I'm going to activate Patchy Jorvus next. I'm going to take a little bit of a chance with Patchy. I'm going to move him up to that far right-hand web cocoon, and I'm going to have him search it. If it's a zombie, that's bad. I'm kind of separated from my guys, and I'm not going to really have a great shot at fighting this thing on my own. But what I can do is just have the zombie appear a little bit away from Patchy so that in next round's Ranger phase, I can just run the other direction. In the end, it doesn't matter. I don't find a zombie. I don't find a survivor either. I just find a dead body. So I guess that all works out. Finally, I'm going to activate Kael Rexmaar. I'm going to double move him to the final cocoon. So we're now at the event phase, and we get the red 5, which is the new nest tree. So this is going to appear 12 inches away from the center point in a random direction. And this could be bad. I really don't want it to appear all the way back at my deployment zone. What happens instead is that it goes on to the left-hand side, to the west. So there it appears with both a treasure token and a giant spider. So in some ways this is good, and in some ways this is bad. I do have some people around that area that can go take care of this thing. Unfortunately, one of them is Robert, who is still stuck in that web. And it is backtracking a little bit. It would be better if my guys could all keep moving forward. However, things look a little brighter because I do have to make a strength check for Robert Renault again, and this time he rolls a 17, so he's broken through those webs and he is ready to rejoin the fight just in time. So new round Ranger phase, we're going to start with Phillipe de Gaston again. He is going to shoot at that spider that just suddenly teleported in with a tree and a treasure, and I don't know how that works, but dark, gloomy forest, I guess sometimes you don't notice some things. Anyway, he's going to take a shot at that spider. First off, we're going to roll another 15. Philippe's just having an on day. Plus 2, that makes 17. The spider rolls a 13, which isn't bad, but it doesn't help it. And it's going to kill the spider. So, with that nice movement of 7, Phillipe is going to roll up right into contact with both the treasure and the tree, in position next round to burn and loot to his heart's content. So next, this is the Ranger phase, but I'm going to activate Kael Rexmaar, and I'm going to have him search that last cocoon. The reason I'm doing that in the Ranger phase as opposed to the Companion phase, which I have been, is because in that immediate area, I don't have a lot of companions, but I do have Tyrus. So if I'm going to find a zombie, I'd rather have Kael do it so that Tyrus can help out. And sure enough, I do in fact find a zombie. So 3 zombies, no survivors. Maybe hike a little faster next time, guys. Now, I believe that because it doesn't say specifically you can use a movement action to search or burn things, then you have to use your other action to do it. So I don't have an action left to fight the zombie. But I do put the zombie in contact with Kael because next up I am going to activate Tyrus. He's going to charge in to go fight this thing. So Tyrus is fighting the zombie and he's got a friend in the combat. He rolls an 8, plus 3 for his fight, plus 2 for his friend, giving him 13. To the zombie's 12, monster's dice are just not working for them. I am only going to cause 1 point of damage, but that's better than nothing. But now it's the creature phase, and we actually have a creature to fight in the creature phase. He is going to attack Kael because Kael has less health than Tyrus. Kael does have a fight of 3, plus his 2 for having a friend nearby. He rolls a 7, which is going to get him 12, but the zombie rolls a 2. So, Kael wins the combat. I don't cause any damage, unfortunately, because the zombie has an armor of 12. I decide not to push him away because I want to continue to punch the zombie until he dies. So next I'm going to activate Robert Renault. He was going to go fight that spider to help out Big Phil, but Big Phil doesn't need the help. So I'm just going to take a double move over to that combat to see if I can't get in on the zombie killing. And finally, Patchy Jorvus just goes and makes a double move to that far right-hand tree. It's the event phase, and this time I roll a red 2, so we finally get some monster reinforcements. A giant spider is going to appear next to a random nest tree. That's not exactly ideal because both nest trees are near some of my less fighty characters, shall we say, and the rest of my combat guys are tied up in the center. That said, I'd really rather this spider not show up next to my rogue, and sure enough it doesn't. It shows up near Phillipe de Gaston, who has not been having a whole lot of trouble killing off spiders so far. So I think that worked out. New round, and Big Phil really has to do something about this spider, so he's going to activate first, and again, take out that bow, and like a champ, rolls another 17. Plus a shoot of 2, that's a 19. Spider rolls a 16. Good roll, not good enough. Another dead one. Sadly, again, I don't think you can use a movement action to burn the tree or pick up that loot, but I'm just going to stand there, counting those gold coins, getting ready to grab it. So Robert feels like he made the right choice in leaving Phil off on his own because he can take care of himself. He is going to activate next, and he's going to charge into that big combat with all my guys surrounding that one poor zombie. Might as well activate him before my ranger because Robert has a fight of +4, and if I move him in, that'll give him an extra 4 because of the 2 friends in the combat. He rolls a 13, so plus that total of 8 will give him 21 versus the zombies 12. No stopping the rangers this game. So Tyrus Halperdirk finds himself with time on his hands in this ranger phase, so he just saunters over to that web tree in the center right and sets it on fire as well. In the creature phase, we again find ourselves without any creatures, so we go on to the companion phase. Patchy Jorvus burns that tree in the far right-hand corner and then moves over to rejoin his friends. Kael takes a double move to go and help out Phillipe. And that brings us to the event phase where there is only one event left, so I could have predicted what was going to happen. It is the red ace, which means that a spider appears at a random nest tree again. There's only one nest tree left on the board, and boy, it is full of spiders because that's the one by Phillipe. So he's got another one of these things to deal with. So that brings us to the next round. I'm going to activate Big Phil again, and this time I think he was just a little bit too distracted with that treasure. Thought there couldn't possibly be any more of these spiders in this tree, and it took him by surprise. He rolls to shoot at it, but he rolls a 1. So he does have another action, but he can only move with that action, and he's right where I want him to be. So we're going to go and we're going to activate Kael Rexmaar next. Kael's going to do 2 things. First off, he's going to run over next to Phillipe and he's going to grab the treasure. So, he has the treasure, which is great. He's also next to Phillipe, so when that spider charges either of us, we're going to have another guy to support us. I'm also clearing the shot because the very next activation is going to be Tyrus Halperdirk, and we're going to take a shot at that spider now that my Man-at-arms has cleared the path, and I'm going to roll an 18. 18 plus my shoot of 2 is going to make a 20. Spider rolls a 12. Halperdirk just mercilessly guns down this spider, clearing the table for good this time. There are going to be no more monsters arriving in this scenario. We've gone through all of the events, we've searched all the cocoons. Creature phase goes by without any creatures to activate. Companion phase, there's no reason for any of my companions to move anywhere, so we go straight on to the next round. We're going to activate Phillipe de Gaston. He's going to burn up that last web tree, and we're done. So remember last scenario when I said this game is so swingy. These dice are so unpredictable and it was incredibly frustrating. Well, I'm not wrong. The dice are like that. It's just in this case, it went entirely to my benefit. I didn't take a single point of damage in this game. I didn't get poisoned. Nothing bad happened to my guys. It's not exactly what you would call ideal. I'd rather a game swung this way and that in the course of things. Having one game where everything goes wrong, followed by another game where everything goes right, it's not ideal. But in the short term, we will take the win. This is Mission 1 complete. So, no casualties to roll for, so we'll go straight on to experience. We killed off 7 spiders and 3 zombies for a total of 20 XP. We searched all 5 cocoons, that'll give us 20. We burnt down all nest trees, that'll give us 25. No nest trees are left on the board, that'll give us 8. The thing that hurts is we found no survivors, so we only ended up with 73 XP. We rolled for the treasure and we got more gold and jewels. Obviously, in game terms, I would love to get magic items, especially ones that don't have a set number of usages, but getting a 10 XP, that is nice. It still doesn't bring us up to enough to go up to level 2. But I'm sure Tyrus and the party are thrilled because we're going to roll back into town having successfully completed the mission with a whole bunch of money to spend. Gonna pay off quite a few bar tabs. Unfortunately, we do probably have to spend a portion of that to pay for the funeral of our dearly departed Templar Grendal Gracht. But otherwise, that's the complete mission for Rangers of Shadowdeep. I like the narrative aspect of the game. I like the scenarios. I don't like how much terrain and specific models are required for some of these things. I know I could proxy it or take some shortcuts. I'm really kind of making it hard on myself. I also have some serious problems with the dice mechanic. It's just so random. I, however, have grown to really like my party and the ranger and the companions. I do like that there is a mechanic in the game where they actively help each other. They can really go out of their way to support each other, and you get these little teams and buddies forming in the midst of the game. There's a real sense of camaraderie amongst your guys, which is weird since you are just playing a solo game. So things I like, things I'm not as thrilled about. Either way, it's gonna be a while before I can play this game again. My goal is to have everything set up for an entire mission, and the next one is 3 scenarios, and it's a lot of stuff. Even if I didn't have other projects, other games that I wanted to get to, it would take me a while to get everything set up. So you're not going to see Rangers of Shadowdeep for a while. I'm sorry about that, but hopefully this will tide you over for the time being. Sorry about some of the mistakes I made in the beginning. I really did want to get everything right. But if you have any questions, observations, concerns, go ahead and leave those in the comment section below. I will see you on the next one.